and like closing my eyes and just like being like could not nap. And I was tossing and turning and getting really frustrated and just closing my eyes and feeling like I was just in this like alert state. And I was like, why is this happening? Everyone and them just being really scared for me and really like, oh, yeah, I haven't slept for a while, but like what you're describing is like next level. So everyone just being really scared, not scared for me, but just like, oh, Candace, that's bad. You need to fix that. Like, that sounds scary. Like, what? You're not sleeping more than a few hours at the moment. So I just remember being like, starting to go inward, starting to be like, okay, I'm different. And I remember feeling really isolated and really alone in that time, which then triggered anxiety and sadness, like deep, deep sadness and anxiety. It was a really dark time. I'd made my life very small. I'd stopped exercising because I wanted to just protect everything. When I get on the other side of this, I'm going to be on Daniel's channel because I want to give back exactly what I clutched onto for survival in the dark stage. You're out of your comfort zone. Of course, your sleep's disrupted. If you just leave it, your body will calibrate on its own. It will heal, like it will get back to homeostasis. And there's nothing wrong with you. If you just allow this period, it could be a few days, it could be a week, but sleep will return.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Candace with us. Welcome.
Thanks, Daniel. It's great to be here.
So glad you're here. And for those of you who don't know, you were part of our Insomnia Immunity program. And I think I suggested to you or asked you if I said, if you ever want to be a guest on the channel, let me know. And you did. And I'm so grateful for that. So here we are. But with that said, yeah, tell us in your words what happened from the very beginning. How did you start having trouble sleeping?
Yeah, so it was quite for me, it was quite a quick trigger. I have not had problems sleeping in the past. In fact, I was quote unquote a good sleeper, and I prided myself on actually being a super napper. So if I ever lacked sleep, I'm a mother of 3 kids, so I had many, many years of disrupted light sleep, but never the fear attached to it. But I always prided myself on a nap to catch up. So I was always able to have a nap and catch up. And even at work, I work as an operator and it was night shift, and just I'd be able to just have these micro naps like all the time whenever I needed to or whenever I wanted to. So that's just something to keep in mind. So it started January 2025, so just over a year ago. My sister-in-law was getting married, and I had to fly over for her hens weekend, which is a couple of hours on a plane over the other side of Australia. So it was a bit of a lead up to it. I was a little bit uncomfortable going just because there was lots of women going that I didn't really know. I was a bit of a routine girl. I kind of liked being with my family, a bit comfortable. But it was my sister-in-law, and it is a good opportunity to have a bit of a break from my 3 children. So I did go, and I just remember feeling a bit anxious from the beginning. I was sort of a bit out of my comfort zone. It was a 3-hour time difference. And just, a few women, I only knew a few of the women that we were sharing a house with. There was lots of travel. So in hindsight, looking back, of course, there's going to be my alert systems are going to be a bit on. So in a nutshell, I arrived over in Byron Bay, which is the other side of Australia from me. And so it was lots of travel, a bus ride, meeting new people. Finally got to Byron Bay, and I remember the first couple nights were a bit messy, a bit like I was like sharing a bed with like my sister-in-law and my friend, and I remember being really uncomfortable on this like pull-out bed in a hotel. Didn't sleep very well. Had to get on the bus the next day. Traveled. I remember the first night in the hotel meeting a bunch of these new women and just being a bit like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. And it's still fun and lovely ladies, but I was just I just really felt like I was out of my comfort zone. And they are they're quite party animals. They're all ready to party, and I would say I'm not as much like that. So I sort of needed a little bit of help to sort of get myself in the party mood. So there was lots of alcohol and things like that, obviously being a hens. And I just remember the first night we got to Byron Bay, it was just lots going on. I was sharing a bed, lots of alcohol. I also had a lot of Dexies. I don't know if you know what they are over in America, but just sort of like an ADHD medication. So keeping me awake because I was a bit of a nana. So I liked my sleep. And so I needed something to keep me up with these girls and the momentum. So just, a big, just lots of elements. And then that night of like the big hens night, sort of up partying late, dancing. It got to about 2:00 in the morning. But I remember thinking, oh, it's only 11 o'clock back home. So I remember always having this like remembering of the time back home and always comparing it. And so that night, like everyone was ready for bed because they all sort of lived over there. And I remember being awake in bed going, okay, it's 11 o'clock back home. My friend fell asleep next to me. She was sort of struggling a little bit as well. And then I just remember, look, well, I've had a lot of like alcohol and things. Like, of course, I'm not going to fall asleep. And I didn't. And I went from like the bed to the couch, back to the bed, back to the lounge room. And the house was full of women. So it was just like every room was full of like women. They were all asleep. And eventually I saw the sun come up and I was like, oh my gosh, I have not slept. And I hadn't had an all-nighter since I was probably like camping as like a teenager, sort of on purpose. I'd always had a couple of hours. So I was a little bit like, whoa, I've actually been awake since. And I remember my brain going, you've been awake since yesterday when you went to the gym at 6 o'clock. So I started like calculating and being like, whoa. But I just went across the road. We were staying in this beautiful big house. And I remember just going to the beach, jumping in the water, getting a coffee and just being like, whatever, I'll have a nap and catch up later, like before we go out. And so I went back and told the whole house, like told everyone I haven't slept. And they're like, oh, whoa. But, it is what it is, carried on. And then we went out for this really like flash luncheon. And I was like falling asleep at the table. So I was talking to someone and I remember my hand resting there and I was talking to someone and I literally like fell asleep like in my hand and I was like, and they were all beautiful and they're like, Candace, just go back to the house and have a nap because we've got a big night ahead. And so I remember going, yep, I'll have a nap, the good old nap that saves me all the time. So I went back to the big house on my own while all the others were still out at this beautiful lunch. And I remember getting all comfy and like closing my eyes and just like being like could not nap. And I was tossing and turning and getting really frustrated and just closing my eyes and feeling like I was just in this like alert state. And I was like, why is this happening? Like I can always nap. And so I was tossed and turned for about 3 hours. And then the other ladies got home and they came into the room and they said, did you have a good sleep? And I just lost it. I just went, I couldn't sleep. And I started hyperventilating and shaking, and I just started crying, and I just had this big body experience, and I'd never had a panic attack in my life, and I've also never really experienced any sort of anxiety ever. So it was really scary experience. And I remember my beautiful friends, put me in the shower, calmed me down. One of the girls came in and said, "Look, I've got a sleep, I've got some melatonin and a sleep gummy and some essential oils, and one of them said, and I've got like a sleeping tablet from that I take, and I'm breastfeeding." And I was always really scared about any medication. I'm a bit of a health conscious person, probably like lots of your guests. Quite a control freak when it comes to anything that messes with anything natural. So I was very skeptical and a little bit resistant, but I was so desperate to sleep at this point. So she gave me this sleep medication. I had a gummy, someone sprayed some stuff on me and some lavender, and I went to sleep. And I slept for 13 hours or something. So I got up the next day. So they all went out that night and I didn't, because I was sleeping, which was fine. And then I remember getting up the next morning and being like, yay, cured. It's all good. And then we went out that night and had a great night. And then the next night came, and the same thing. I went to bed at a reasonable time that night, because I didn't want to get into the negatives again. It's all about numbers. And it was the same thing. I just laid on the bed and bang, could not sleep. And then I went searching for the girl who gave me the sleep tablet from her doctor. And I just went to her and said, "Can I please have that medication again, because I'm still not sleeping. I can feel myself not being able to sleep. So I need that help. And then things will be okay once I get home. Once I get home, back to my bed, back to my family, things will be okay." So she gave me another half good as the night before. So I only got about half a night. So it kind of just stemmed from there. That was the initial trigger. And then I kept on taking that half a tablet. She gave me a few more to get me through till I was home. I took one every night, and it got just less and less sleep every night until I got home, back to Perth, Western Australia. Was back with my family, thinking everything would be okay. I was running out of those half tablets. So I was a bit like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do once these run out? Because I really felt the need to assist myself in sleeping. So I just remember being back with my family. The medication had run out. We were traveling back to so we live a big drive away from Perth, Western Australia. So on that drive on the way home, I remember jumping into a health food store and buying the sleep teas, the magnesium, anything that said sleep on it, I bought, because I was like, off this medication, back to natural. I booked my homeopath, an appointment. I just was doing all these things so that I was set up for a good sleep once I got home. And I remember on our way home, we stopped into a town, and we stayed just the overnight, and we're going to leave at about 2:00 in the morning so that our kids would sleep for most of the trip home. And I remember, and this is what really threw me into a spiral. So I didn't have any of the medication left. I'd taken the sleep tea, magnesium, all that sort of stuff before before I went to sleep to get up at 2:00 in the morning. And I remember at least putting on a podcast or an Audible book or something, because I've always been able to fall asleep to an Audible book or something. And I remember putting this Audible book on, and going to sleep, not having anything to assist me except for my sleep teas and all that sort of stuff. And I remember listening, and then obviously I had this extra pressure to sleep because we had to get up at 2:00 in the morning to drive home. And I remember listening to the Audible book, and then it ended, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not asleep, and this like chapter like has finished, and I'm still. And then I remember looking at the time, and looked at the time every hour, and then it got to 2:00 in the morning. My alarm went off. I hadn't slept, and I just walked into my husband. I just woke my husband up, and I said, we've got to go, and I haven't slept, and I just lost it again like I did on the trip in Byron Bay, just very scared, like what is going on. So in a nutshell, with that section of the spiral, it just spiraled into, as soon as we get home, so we got home, same sort of thing happened. Was as soon as I went to bed at night, nothing was happening, and then I spiraled into just fixing the fixer part of like, I told everyone that would listen. I was looking for advice everywhere I went. The school year had just started. So every time I was at school drop off, I was just going, this is what's happened to me. I don't know what's going on. And everyone was sort of like, oh my gosh, wow. And which then made me go like, oh, whoa, so this is like really bad. And then I've just got a little list of the things that I tried in the spiral, which was, so I went to the chiropractor first, because she was always like my savior in anything. And I remember she said, what are you here for? And I said, I think I've got like insomnia, because at this point I'd researched. It's sort of been about a week since the initial trigger. And she just looked at me and she's like, oh, she goes, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, I had insomnia. And she goes, my advice is to not, she goes, don't do anything about, like, don't try and fix it. Don't like read into it too much. But I remember her being like, oh, I don't really want to know about it. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was just like, hopefully you're all good. And sort of like, did the adjustment, and I left. But she was sort of like, I remember her being like, oh, I remember, like, but just, she's like, don't read into it too much. And now I'm like, oh, now I know why. So I did chiropractic, kinesiology, sleep teas, oils, magnesium supplements, Reiki, my prayer, counseling, body code, binaural beats, herbs, tinctures, homeopathy, blue light, all that stuff, up with the sun, meditation, and I just got here, so my homeopath, she tried 3 different remedies for me. And I remember sort of at the, sorry, I think my computer just did something. So she kind of got to the end. We were sort of working with each other for about a week. And she kind of just got to this point where she's like, I don't know what to do anymore. And I just like bailed on her. I was like, before you reject me, because I know that you can't help me, I'm just going to like stop this. And I remember that being really scary for me, being like, oh my gosh, like not even my homeopath can save me from this. So yeah, tried everything, the blue lights. I remember just like screaming at my family when they turned a light on. And I had like my, these are all great things with sleep disturbances, but as well as I do that insomnia struggle is very different to a sleep disturbance. And that's what I just remember meeting everyone and them just being really scared for me and really like, oh, yeah, I haven't slept for a while, but like what you're describing is like next level. So everyone just being really scared, not scared for me, but just like, oh, Candace, that's bad. You need to fix that. Like, that sounds scary. Like, what? You're not sleeping more than a few hours at the moment. So I just remember being like, starting to go inward, starting to be like, okay, I'm different. And that's when that disconnect began of like, okay, no one gets this. I'm probably going to have to start looking into this seriously on my own though, because this is getting pretty bad. I did go down the medication route quite quickly as well. and it just didn't work for me. Like it would work for a while, then it wouldn't, and then I got sort of and this was very difficult for me. Like I said, I don't take much more than a Panadol my whole life, so it was very confronting to be handed quite heavy sedating medication, and then for it to not work, and then just thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? And just to
sorry
sort
to
of,
interrupt, Candice, but just timeline wise, are we now like in February, March, or even further? Or
yeah, so this is about a month. This whole searching for answers and so all this list of fixing was about 4 to 5 weeks, and so some things work for a little bit sometimes, and then they wouldn't, and then every time something didn't work, it was like a piece of me it was just put me into this darker spiral. So it was about 5 weeks of the initial trigger spiral into fixing it, and just starting to really disconnect from the outside world, feeling very alone. I think people listening, I remember I've actually been through a fair bit of grief and loss and hardship in my life, but through those things, including the death of my mother, and there's always someone that understood. Like there's always someone you could go to and they would go, oh yeah, I get it. But whenever I described this feeling, no one really understood, and I remember feeling really isolated and really alone in that time, which then triggered anxiety and sadness, like deep sadness and anxiety. That's the first bit of like the trigger and the fixing, which was about 5 weeks of just having no idea what was going on with me.
Wow, thanks for sharing this. You're telling your story in a really powerful way, and I think so many in the community will really relate to it. And I just have one question for you, which was, you have 3 kids, you have obligations, things you need to do during the day. How did you manage with that?
Yeah, that's right. So I work part-time for a mining company, thankfully part-time. And I've been working with them for nearly 15 years. So I've got a flexible work arrangement with them. And so when I came back, I went straight back to work with like all the little bits and pieces that I was trying. But then when I realized that nothing was working, and as I got progressively into my dark spiral of being like, something's seriously wrong with me, I actually left work. Like I called them up and explained what was going on. And like I said, thankfully I'm in a big company, Rio Tinto. So they were absolutely amazing and were like, they're very supportive of mental health. And I didn't even want to label it as that. That was really scary for me as well, because, I pride myself as a happy-go-lucky person. Everyone was always like, I lifted people's moods at work. Like I was always the happy, smiley one and the good friend and all that. So I didn't want to be seen as someone else in this time. Like I didn't want people to see me as this sad, depressed, and anxious person, because I was like, that's not me. I don't want the world to see that part of me. So I actually couldn't work. I stopped going into work, and they supported me through that. And my kids had just started a new school year. 2 of my kids were in school, and I had one and my son at home at the time. And my husband works shift work, so he happened to have been his month off at the time, which was lucky as well. So obviously in hindsight, it wasn't a good thing, but at the time I just wanted time off work to fix and know what was going on with me. It was quite difficult. I'd moved into the lounge room. I couldn't sleep in my own bedroom, so I moved a mattress into the lounge room because it was too, like lots of people experience, it was way too scary and confronting for me to go into my bedroom. So I moved into the lounge room. I had set up like a little space, and I had also, by this point as well, just add that I did go to the ER one night as well. I remember I just wanted to add that because I know that lots of people had said that as well. And so I am also someone that called one night after I tried all the things again in this last ditch effort, and it didn't work. And I just would wake up in this absolute panic. And so I took myself, I think it was about, I was on my fourth day of not sleeping. I'm sure I did, but at the time I didn't think that I had. And I went to the ER, and my biggest fear of all of this was that I would end up in a psych ward as a mother of, mother of 3 small children. And that was like my biggest fear. And I remember going to emergency and them saying, like, what are you here for? And I said, I haven't slept in 4 days. And they were really lovely, but they gave me this medication and they said, this is a psych med. And I just went, like, I'm a psycho. Like I'm gonna end up in a psych ward. And I remember just this fear just rippling through my body. But I was so desperate to sleep, and I took it, and they said, take it and go home, and it will start working within about half an hour, and it'll knock you out. And I remember going home, taking this medication, resisting it with all my might because it was so scary for me to take this. I guess that would mean that I'm accepting that I'm like the psych med, that I was a psych patient. So I resisted it when my brain was on such high alert, such hyper arousal state that this medication, I felt myself getting taken by it. And I was like, and I didn't sleep that night. And I remember just being in the shower, and my neighbor had to come over, and I was just like screaming and crying in the shower and being like, the medication for in the psych patients didn't even work for me. And I just remember being like absolutely lost. Like, what is the hell is wrong with me? So that was probably one of my lowest points as well.
Yeah. Wow. No, you're again telling your story in such a powerful way. I can just imagine you being in the emergency room, getting the psych medication, and you think this is going to confirm that there's something truly wrong with you. The conflict between not wanting to take it, but also wanting to take sleep, and all this.
Yeah.
So again, you're no longer working. You're struggling tremendously. What happens next?
So I remember one day, so this is about 5 weeks after 5 or 6 weeks after the initial trigger. And I came across Martin Reed's Insomnia coach. And I remember just praying to God, like just being like, give me something, like surely there's going to be something out there. But I was really like anti anything that was like meditation or anything like spiritual, because I'd been so put off at the start because it was like a trigger. It'd become a trigger for me. So I was just looking for podcasts, and I remember Martin Reed came up, and I listened to a couple of his podcasts, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like the recovery stories of his podcast. That's when these normal people, by this point I had diagnosed myself with insomnia, which did lead me to Reddit and all those places. But for me, those places were awful because I remember reading things like still not sleeping after 20 years or, just these horrific stories of like people wanting to die. It was just horrific. So for me, I had already like banned myself from that. I'd already thrown all my medication in the bin, in my big green bin out the front, being like, I'm done with medication, because it either made me feel like a zombie the next day, or it was worse than, it just didn't work for me. So I'd thrown it all. I was just in this surrender state of like, I don't know what else to do. Surely there's someone out there. So yeah, I remember listening to a few of his success stories and just being like in tears, because these were normal people, like mothers and like doctors and smart intellectual people, because I'm like normal. I think I had this idea that insomniacs were just like these, obese, lazy people in bed that just were depressed and overweight and ate all day and slept like, I don't know. I just had this idea in my head. And so I just remember being like, oh my gosh. And so I remember reaching out to him quite quickly, and I was tossing and turning whether to actually like pay to go down that route. And I just started sort of adapting a few of his ideas at first. So I started the CBT-I, not like the strict CBT-I, but just like in his methods. But I think at this point, my nervous system was in such a state of fear that even I realized quite quickly that any sort of control at this point was too much. It was too unsafe for my body. So I remember it kind of made it worse, because I would start going, okay, I'm not going to go to sleep till like 12 o'clock at night and give myself this small window. But something I'd always done is gone to sleep with my family. So we would always sort of go off and sleep with a child each, and, fall asleep together. And it was always this nice time. And I remember they would all go off into their room, like into the rooms together, and they'll be like, bye, Mum. And I'd just be like, here I am, and I'd be pacing around the house trying to enjoy this window of like, it's just like do something nice, and with my glasses on and trying to enjoy myself, but feeling this like absolute sadness and isolation from my family while they're all snoring away and my dog's snoring next to me, and I'm just like alone. So I think that made it kind of worse. So even though I knew that what was going on now in terms of like the hyper arousal state, that my brain had learned that there's the threat, like a bear is, that's how my system was. So I was very thankful for that. But I just wasn't liking this controlled sleep environment, trying to force myself to sleep in these windows. My next step was I found one of his stories of someone that had recovered, was now a coach, and I actually reached out to her, and I paid a fair bit of money for her to be like my one-on-one coach. And same thing, quite quickly I bailed after a couple of weeks, because she just wanted too much information, too much questioning, and I just thought, I don't know what my sleep's like. I don't know what time I'm going to sleep. I don't know how to, like, mindfulness was just so ick to me at that point because of the mindfulness I'd done at the beginning, and it didn't work. So I was just in this like, oh, I don't know, like, and so I just said, I'm so sorry, I can't do this with you anymore. So I was kind of left again, not knowing what to do. But then quite quickly after that, I think in one of his forums, someone mentioned the sleep coach school, or it was like either on YouTube and it sort of went to you because I'd started, I don't know exactly what led me to your page, but I know that it was 6 weeks into this process I found the sleep coach school.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you did. And I can, from where the story is going, you can tell that our way is kind of like gentle and flexible, and probably was a better fit for you. But a shout out to Martin Reed. He's a close friend of mine and doing wonderful work here. And like, I can also saw it in front of you when you finally heard someone who you'd relate to tell their story and you were crying in so much relief. That's wonderful. But yeah, I don't have any questions apart from, what happens next.
So straight away, I joined the immunity program because at this point I wanted connection. I wanted people. I wanted to talk to someone who had been through a similar experience, because it was like, as while I was reading these. Oh, so I did spend about a week, just like obsessively listening to your YouTube channel. Obviously, when I came across your channel, it was even more of like oh my gosh, look how many people are like me. And just hearing the mothers, especially, because there's something about this spiral, is that you have this identity as a mother and a wife and a good worker and all those things, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm such a shit wife, I'm such a shit friend, I'm a shit mom, and who am I anymore? I miss my old self, like this grieving process of who you used to be, and you're just so confused and you just want that person back so much. And I think that's part of the suffering, is this desperation for your old self. But it's kind of like, if you just trust the process, this new you is beginning to form on the other side. But obviously when you're in the struggle, you can't see that. So I remember I joined the immunity program after watching about 100 recovery stories in the space of like a week, I just had this space on my couch, and at this point I wasn't really eating either and things like that. So the anxiety had taken over the daytime as well. So I was just a bit of a mess. And so just obsessively just watching every single video that I could on your channel. And then I joined the immunity program. Coach Christian was my coach, and Veronica. But because of Australian time, I only dealt with Christian. And at the time, he had a coach in training, Monica. And so, I just jumped straight on that. And I remember, it was amazing just to speak to people that were going through it at the same time. It was just so healing to hear that, just to know that you're not alone, that nothing's wrong with you, and that your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do, but it's just that bit confused. And I think because I spiraled so deeply and quickly, like I said, some people can just work on a bit of like time management with their sleep and a little bit of guidance, and it's like they can get back to normal. But for me, I just spiraled so deeply and so quickly. I had built these really deep neuropathways of fear, and so it was going to take a bit of rewiring to for my brain to realize that there's nothing wrong, and that I am perfectly safe. So just a quick jump in. So about 5 weeks in, I had the wedding was coming up of the hens night that I went to. So we had to travel again and also stay in a house that we were sharing with people. And so my body just went into absolute fight or flight again, because I couldn't think of anything worse than doing that in the state that I was in. I had really started to make my life very small. I hadn't gone back to work. I couldn't socialize just because I didn't want people to see me in this state. It was a really dark time. I'd made my life very small. I'd stopped exercising because I wanted to just protect everything. So for me to get on a plane and travel again, it was absolutely terrifying. But I did it because thankfully I come across, because I was on in the immunity program, and I had told them about this, and obviously I had some guidance of facing a fear and allowing whatever sensations to come up to be there and all that sort of stuff. So I went on this trip, and it was actually amazing. Like, I remember having a near panic attack on the plane, because obviously when our bodies are in this state and our brains are in this state, it starts flagging everything as threats, not just not sleeping. For me, it became anxiety in the day, a sensation in the body, like rumination. It sort of had spread to so many different facets of my life. And so I think facing that, my sleep actually got a little bit better on the trip. It was sort of like while I was facing this threat, it kind of softened a little bit. And I remember going, oh my gosh, I'm actually getting a little bit of sleep down here. Things are good. And then, so it wasn't too bad apart from the anxiety in the day. And then I remember coming home from this trip. And so while I was down there as well, I had a couple private one-on-ones with Alina, Coach Alina, and Christian as well. And then I came back and I was in a really good headspace. But then I came home and all the memories of that dark period of the spiral just came back. And this fear again just rippled through my body. And I remember my husband going, what's happened? You were just doing really well and you've just come home and it's just something's just happened to you. And I just went on the couch and I was just like so scared of going back to that dark place that so it actually put me into a worse state for a while, to the point where I actually decided I needed medical help at that point where I was, which was very difficult for me to accept help. And the doctor put me on an SSRI, which was just like so difficult for me to accept that, just because I like antidepressant. That's for people who, don't get exercise, that don't eat healthy, that don't get good sunlight and wake up in the morning and get the sunset. And, just I had this idea of who people are that take medication. So it was a very big humbling experience for me. And I had a one-on-one with Coach Ali, and she was just amazing at being like, Candace, there is a time and a place for self-care and self-love. And sometimes we need our nervous systems to be in a bit of a better place to be able to then do the inner work. So I accepted that, and that was very difficult. But I'd lost a lot of weight at this point, like 10 kilos. Couldn't eat, couldn't leave the house. So I remember crying and being like, I hate who I am. So that was the point where I realized who I really, the voice that you have in your head. You can stand in front of the mirror all day long and go, I'm brave, I'm beautiful, I'm courageous. But when you're in a dark place and in a state, going through hardship, what are you saying to yourself in those times? And for me, it was not nice. So I realized that, wow, I do not have much compassion and empathy for myself through this. So that was this really big step of self-love, self-awareness, humbling experience for me. And I took that medication and it worked quite quickly, a lot quicker than they say it's meant to. And I think that's just because I forgot how you word it, but it's like you put the responsibility.
The delegation, yeah.
Yeah, the delegation, yes. Because I remember people being like, it takes like 6 weeks, but within like a week, I was like eating again, and I was just so thankful to eat, and I was like crying and like eating steak and being like, I'm so thankful. I was just thankful for everything. I remember being on the calls in the immunity group and just like my face was just bright and happy, just because even though my sleep hadn't like fixed itself yet, I was just so thankful to not be riddled with anxiety and to be able to eat and start to have my daughter's friends over again, to go to their sports, just this bit of capacity again. So I was very thankful for that, but I also knew that this was just going to assist me and I'm going to do the work now. So it enabled me to really sit with this acceptance, because I couldn't accept it at the start. It was the first level of acceptance for me, was that I couldn't accept it. And I remember that being a good first step for me, was that I accept that I can't accept this right now. But that, so I was in this space of just, doing the calls. I remember the first sign of like being like, wow, the mind is so powerful, was the hypnic jerks was a huge part of what was going on with me. As soon as I would drift off to sleep, a hypnic jerk would pull me out. And I remember being so afraid of that. And I remember Coach Christian being like, why don't you see it as that's a good thing? That's your body is going to sleep. And instead of resisting it and freaking out about it, why don't you just go, my body's going to sleep. It does know what to do. And I remember doing this and practicing it. And eventually, and not long, maybe in a couple of weeks, my hypnic jerks stopped. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this mindfulness stuff that I'd always been so resistant to, like blah, 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 mindfulness work. Yeah, right. And I was like, oh my gosh, it freaking worked. And I remember being like, come on, give me a hypnic jerk. And they wouldn't come. They wouldn't come anymore. And I think I've had maybe two since then, and I've just laughed about it. Anyway, but that was when I really was like, okay, this work of allowing and accepting what happens in the night instead of resisting it and panicking is actually what's going to lead me out of this struggle. So for the next 3 months or so, I did this. I laid there and it would turn into different things. It would go to rumination. It would go to ear, like when you get a song in your head. And I remember being like, this song all night would just play in my head and I'd be like, but then like reaching out to a coach and then being like, yep, your brain's just latching on to all these new little things. So I just had to face them all. And as soon as something came up in the outside world, so I'd started going to work again, I brought back coffee, I'd, just let go of anything that was like protecting my sleep. And eventually I felt ready to come off the medication. And that was really difficult as well, because you have to sort of like trust the work that you've done. And, because it's quite scary, someone that's been disconnected from my body my whole life. It's something that like you have to learn to feel, like sensations, feelings, emotions. It's just you. And you can handle anything in your body. But you have to learn to trust that. And that takes time. And I always thought, yeah, I can handle this moment. But what if I spiral again? What if I go back to that place? And that just takes a long time to learn that you can handle it. Like you can handle in the moment, you can handle anything. And that took some time. And I remember coming off the medication and holding myself through the sensations and the feelings after I'd come off the medication. And it was very empowering to be like, I've got this, I've got myself, I can handle this. And it was, a very powerful feeling.
Wow. Yeah. No, thanks for sharing this. And I think one thing that sometimes comes up is, hey, Daniel, like when we hear these success stories on your channel, it sounds like everybody they found your channel and then everything was easy for them. But, you're telling a very true story, which is you found the community you were looking for. You found the answers you were looking for. You found education, support, and everything still wasn't easy. It was still a back and forth and up and down. And so that's really valuable to hear. And also, one little point on the medication there, that I think the delegation is one thing where it's like we think we sort of like I'm no longer responsible for making myself calm. I delegate that work to this medication, and then we're no longer trying to keep ourselves calm. We're no longer putting in effort, and that's calming to us, makes things easier for us. But there's another aspect to this also, which is that you had this strong kind of resistance towards taking medication, right? You were thinking it was like almost like a failure. It's not something I do. And then we have this like big conflict, because on one hand we think this might help us, but on the other hand we think, but I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And so when we finally go it's okay. I'm going to allow myself to do this for myself. And we take this medication that we've been so resistant to. There's so much tension and pressure that comes off that also leads to a big relief, right? And ease. So, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just enabled me to feel a lot too. I think, like I said previously, I've always prided myself on being like a strong person, but I think I'd actually shut down a lot of my feelings and emotions. And I think this experience also just brought up a lot of emotional baggage over the years that I had suppressed. So it was a bit of an outlet and a big healing experience. In the time, it was awful, but looking back, I almost see it as like a huge emotional purge that I needed for the years of emotional suppression. And that was just a trigger that allowed it to all sort of unfold. But yeah, absolutely, the delegation and trust, like really trusting the process, was so difficult. But when you really realize that you can handle anything, it's very, yeah, it's a beautiful, powerful thing for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And I want to ask a little bit more about like how this experience has changed you and what you learned from it. But before we go there, it sounds as if you found kind of the self-kindness, you found this ability to actually handle emotions, thoughts, feelings as they came along. And are we now at kind of the tail end of the struggle where things get easier, or kind of what happens next in your story?
Yeah, so interestingly, my sleep my sleep was never like really bad, as in like I didn't get many like sleepless nights apart from the beginning. But I remember once I took the medication, my sleep did not improve at all. I was sort of getting like maybe 3 hours a night at this point consistently. And I remember being like just so thankful that I could eat again and like socialize, that it didn't bother me. And I realized that I was working out again, going back to work, and just being so thankful that I was living again, that I didn't care so much about sleep. I cared more about living, the things that made me happy, and bringing joy back into my life. I learned to slow down. And I think that not caring so much about sleep, because I was so just thankful about the other changes, that the sleep did start to come back. And it turned into more of a journey of like the anxiety and coming out of depression more so than the sleep. I think the sleep was more of this like byproduct that definitely improved over this time. But I just want to reiterate that the journey for me personally, you definitely get people that recovered quite quickly. And I remember at the start when I was in the struggle, I only wanted to listen to the people who were recovered in like 6 to 8 weeks or after they finished your program. But for me, it was a journey of so much more. And I think all these fears had to be faced, and the depression and the anxiety that came alongside the sleep is sort of like the sleep was just this byproduct about all the other stuff that was going on in my life. And I think the power and what I've learned through going through that is, yeah, the sleep just sort of kind of fixed itself along the way. It didn't become my like focus. And that's obviously, like you say, paradoxically is when the sleep does come back.
Yeah, exactly. So well said. And you've watched many of these interviews, so you know the two questions I always ask people towards the end. And one of them is like, have you learned things that have helped you in other aspects of life? And you you already alluded to it, but you said earlier that you were kind of becoming a different person in a way, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that when you're in the struggle. But anyway, that's my question to you. Have you learned things that have helped in other aspects of life?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I was grieving the old me in the struggle. And, God was just like, hurry up and accept it so that you can move into this new version of yourself that will be a lot better. So absolutely, I have changed so much as a person. I'm a much better wife now, friend, like my circle's gotten smaller, and just organically my life's gotten smaller but more potent. I let things go a lot more. I have a lot more patience. I I feel like it's a superpower once you learn that anxiety, like the emotions and sensations in your body, is just an energy that needs to just come up, be seen, felt, heard, and let go of. And I think as well through my children, they're my biggest mirrors on that, and really allowing them to allow their sensations to come up, however that looks like, and how healthy that is. My health obsessions have subsided a little bit. I think that's been really interesting too. I think you can be the healthiest person on earth in terms of food, exercise, fresh air, all the filters in your house and the mold systems and all sorts. But if you're not dealing with what's inside, you can, it can look good on the outside, but the inside is another story. So I think it's a superpower to now when I go through, sadness, I still, think back and get a little bit sad sometimes, or I still deal with some anxiety sometimes, but now I'm just go, oh, yeah, this is what's arising. I'm just feeling it and allowing it to be there and to let it go. And it does, and it moves past. And it's so nice to start teaching my children that superpower now. I just think, I'm so thankful for life, like so much more. I've been through a lot. Like I said, I've been through a lot as a child, and just lots of big sort of traumatic experiences in my life. But this has been weirdly probably the darkest I've ever felt. So to come out the other side, I just remember thinking, when I get on the other side of this, I'm going to be on Daniel's channel, because I want to give back exactly what I clutched onto for survival in the dark stage. So lots of big changes, and I wouldn't want to go back to the old me anymore. So very thankful now for the experience.
Let's end there. There was such powerful, wonderful words, and I want to thank you so much for thinking of the community. And no doubt a bunch of people will hear this, and it will give them inspiration, hope, and lead them to where you are now. So just want to say big thanks, Candice, for being a guest here and be in touch.
Thank you. I will add, I think you have another question. What would you say to yourself?
Yeah. I felt like you've already said something powerful things, so I was going to skip that one, but now go for it.
Well, there is something that I actually would say, because it is very helpful. So if I had like a professional, like a doctor at the time, or just someone to say to me, hey, Candace, you just went on this hens trip, you're out of your comfort zone. Of course, your sleep's disrupted. If you just leave it, your body will calibrate on its own. It will heal, like it will get back to homeostasis, and there's nothing wrong with you. If you just allow this period, it could be a few days, it could be a week, but sleep will return. And I think if someone said that to me in those first few weeks, maybe first week, and just said, you are okay, you are safe, there's nothing wrong with you, and your body will sort itself out, because it's incredibly healing. And if we just get out of the way, and if I didn't go into those hundreds of fix-its and just allowed my body to calibrate on its own, then I wouldn't have been as deep into the struggle. So that's what I wish someone had said to me at the start.
Wonderful. Yeah, that would surely have helped an incredible amount. But thanks then for that additional kind of bonus insight for you. And let's conclude there. Thanks again, Candice.
Thanks, Daniel. See ya.
Bye, everyone. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found a ton of value in the video that you just watched. As you can probably tell, we share everything freely on our YouTube channel about what leads us from insomnia to a place of peaceful sleep for the rest of our lives. But it can take some time and bandwidth to go through all the free content to find the answers to the questions that you have. And this is why we have already done curation for you in our Insomnia Immunity Program and in bedtime. So if you want to save some time and bandwidth, those are great options for you. In our Insomnia Immunity Program, we have a video-based curriculum. In bedtime, we have a text-based curriculum. Either way, what really matters is that the content is laid out in a logical fashion, in a stepwise fashion, where every step takes you closer to that place of peaceful sleep for the rest of your life. If this sounds like something you'd like to explore, head over to our website, thesleepcoachtool.com. And if you decide to join and let us guide you forward, we can't wait to see you on the other side.